Jayadvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jayadvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jayadvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Is this sound okay? So Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, this is Adi Leela, a chapter 5 entitled The Glories of Lord Nityananda Balaram. Okay. I'll read a few verses. They don't have any purports. And then come to the particular verse that brings in Lalita Devi. So this is text number 212. Vrindavana Purandara Shri Madana Gopala Rasa Vilasi Shakshad Vrajendra Kumara. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Lord Madana Gopal, the chief deity of Vrindavan, is the enjoyer of the rasa dance and is directly the son of the king of Vraja. Text 2 and 3. Shri Radha Lalita Sange Rasa Vilasa Man Mata Rupe Yanhara Prakasha. Translation. He enjoys the rasa dance with Srimati Radharani, Sri Lalita and others. He manifests himself as the Cupid of Cupids. Text 214. Tasham Avirabuj Chori Smayamana Mukham Bhuja Pitambaradara Shravi Shakshan Manmataha. Translation. Wearing yellow garments and decorated with a flower garland, Lord Krishna appearing among the gopis with his smiling lotus face looked directly like the charmer of the heart of Cupid. Purport, this is a quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 32, text number 2. And the final verse for today, text 215. Swamadurye lokera manakare akashana dohi pasaradha lalita karena sevana. Translation. With Radha and Lalita serving him on his two sides, he attracts the hearts of all by his own sweetness. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Several years ago, I was doing some research when I gave a similar talk here in Sri Vrindavan Dham on the occasion of Srimati Lalita Devi's appearance day. And I looked and looked in the database and in other books about Srila Prabhupada in relation to speaking something about Srimati Lalita Devi. So that particular year during Kartik, at the Disappearance Day festival here of Srila Prabhupada, it was sort of nagging me that, in a nice way, not nagging in a bad way, nagging my consciousness that I should find out, something about Srila Prabhupada in relation to Lalita Devi. So anybody I used to meet, especially a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, I used to ask, like that. And surprisingly, no one really said anything much, like that. And then in one, you could say, room conversation, Srila Prabhupada mentions, Sri Radha, Krishna Padan, Sahagana, Shri Lalita, Shri Vishakamsta, like that. So Prabhupada, he repeats this in a room conversation with devotees, like that. So it's like a subtle exchange, and then Srila Prabhupada simply said that, yes, we offer our respectful obeisances to Srimati Radharani, but along with Krishna, Sri Radha Krishna Padan, the lotus feet, and Sri and Sahagana, Lalita, and along with Lalita and Vishaka. Then in that simplicity of that particular conversation, Srila Prabhupada said, yes, Lalita is along with Krishna and Srimati Radharani. That's about it. So on that particular Kartik, I came in front of the deities and I saw that Krishna is in between. Vishaka is on one side, but Krishna is in between, like that. And we are aware that Srimati Radharani is a principal left-wing gopi. Left-wing indicates that I don't want to be with you, but at the same time, I want to be with you. It's a sort of a very deep type of transcendental consciousness you want to be with me, but I don't want to be with you, but yet I have to be with you. Something like that, in that sense. And Srimati Lalita Devi is on Krishna's right side, like that, on our altar, like that. And Lalita Devi brings out the consciousness of Srimati Radharani to be a left-wing gopi. In other words, she must act in such a way that she must make it difficult for Krishna to get her association. Internally I want to be with you, but externally I don't want to be with you. So she makes it more difficult, Radharani, for Krishna to get her association. And that simplicity of making it difficult for Krishna to get Radharani's association is actually organized and arranged and choreographed by Lalita Devi. Like that. It's arranged like that by Lalita Devi. So, so when Krishna finds it easy to be in the association of Srimati Radharani, he knows that Lalita Devi is not around, like that. And he doesn't really appreciate that it is so easy to get Srimati Radharani's association, like that. So therefore, Lalita Devi comes in that sense. Of course, this is all on the super transcendental platform. It's very, extremely difficult to explain in philosophical terms. Extremely difficult to explain in philosophical terms, like that. And Srila Rupa Goswami in his Lalita Astakam, he sort of brings out Srimati Lalita Devi's transcendental nature and consciousness in relation to giving pleasure to Krishna, especially in relationship to changing Radharani's mood in relationship to Krishna. That it's not easy for you to get by association, like that. So Lalita Devi, she, according to Srila Rupa Goswami, practically worships the perspiration of Shishi Radha Shama Sundar, like that. In other words, Chintamani Prakara Sadmashu Kalpa Viksha, that the transcendental abode here is composed of the nature of Chintamani gems. But the Chintamani gems, they don't really exist on its own, fully conscious to give pleasure to the transcendental couple and the associates of the Lord, like that. They are manifest through the consciousness of the loving dealings between Krishna and his associates, like that. So when Radha Shama Sundar are in the transcendental association, but I just have to say one thing here. We should know that we cannot attribute a material, mundane experience of boy and girl to what we are discussing. Because Radha Krishna are one supreme soul in two forms, whereas material, mundane experience are two different souls in material bodies. So you cannot really attribute some material experience to these things. Because there's one supreme soul in two transcendental forms for the sake of rasa or pastimes, like that. So when they are in the association in terms of transcendental, you could say, ecstasy, there is a sense of perspiration. And Rupa Goswami tells us that this type of perspiration, it flows from the transcendental forms, and it actually crystallizes into Chintamani gems, like that. See? And when they leave that type of a kunj or abode, and then Lalita comes for Mahaprasad, like that. And she worships that a formation of the transcendental perspiration that forms into Chintamani, like that. She worships that because she made it difficult for Krishna to associate with Srimati Radharani. But at the same time, after they associate, she's in ecstasy that they did. That they did in ecstasy. And she worships that place. Like we say, Nikunja Yuno Ratikeli Sita, in these kunjas, like that. And when she does that, then the beauty of her transcendental form is more prevalent, or prakati, it becomes more manifest. It's all in relationship to giving Radha and Krishna pleasure, like that. And the beauty of her form comes out in such a way that that the moon at that evening becomes embarrassed. The moon actually becomes embarrassed. In other words, the cooling rays of her transcendental form defeats the cooling rays of the moon, in that sense, like that. And when that happens to her, by associating with that place of the transcendental pastimes of Radha Shama Sundar, like that, and especially worshipping that place, like that, it becomes a dham within a dham. It becomes a holy place within a holy place, like that. And then what happens to her? She becomes, in a sense, agitated transcendentally, and her eyes becomes like a deer that is full of, you could say, looking around, a deer. It's like full of alarm. It becomes alarmed. Her eyes becomes like that. And she looks for Radha Shama Sundar, like that. And Rupa Goswami compares her eyes to that of an alarmed deer, like that. And then she feels, now it's time for me to go and see my Istadev, Srimati Radharani, like that. And it's time for me to decorate her in such a way that there's no evidence that Krishna was with her. When she goes back to Jawat, in that sense, like that. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Shama Sundar Lalita Vishaka Ki Jai. Yeah. And then for her to do that, she first has to prepare herself. She has to prepare herself to actually go back and decorate Srimati Radharani. And for that purpose, she wears a most beautiful silk dress, and a favorite outfit is colored in the form of outstretched peacock feathers. That's a favorite outfit, peacock feathers, as well as a nice upper garment or a blouse. And when she dresses like that, her complexion becomes more manifest, and it defeats the movement of molten gold, liquid molten gold. It defeats that, like that. And now she is ready to meet Srimati Radharani. Yeah. So in that readiness of consciousness, she becomes Srimati Radharani's Shiksha Guru, like that. Now there is a lesson here, like that. In sadhana bhakti, a guru, a diksha guru and a shiksha guru, they are on their best behavior in front of their disciples. In sadhana bhakti, they are on their best behavior in front of the disciples, because the disciples see them as a perfect and pure role model. The disciple doesn't see any fault in the guru. But the guru in a natural state feels that I am full of holes in front of my guru, but not in front of the disciple, like that. So here, in a simplistic way, Srimati Radharani sees Lalita Devi as the perfect person, because now she is in the consciousness of the Shiksha Guru. She is somewhat, in some places, it says about, you could say, about 27 days elder to Srimati Radharani. For anniversary, it's like 2 days elder now, in that sense, like that. Yeah. So in that way, she begins to teach Srimati Radharani further arts of a left-wing heroine, like a gopi. She tells, look, although I made it difficult for Krishna to meet you, let us make it more difficult. Like that. And those lessons of being an extreme left-wing gopi is given by Lalita Devi to Srimati Radharani, like that. Now, in order for her to do that, in order for Lalita to do that, she has to become the Shiksha Guru, and she has to change her whole consciousness to chastise the disciple, to chastise the disciple in the form of Srimati Radharani. And she says some very heavy words, to Srimati Radharani, like that. And Rupa Goswami tells us, she says that, you have to be, you have to be nistha, you have to be firm, like that, firm. Nistha, you have to be firm. And Radharani asks, firm in what way? Like that. Now, you have to be firm to reject this shrewd, this shrewd fellow, shrewd son, who is the son of the king of Raja, Nanda Maharaj. You have to be firm and reject him, like that. And then she says that, you just associated with him, and therefore you are immoral. You are immoral. She chastises Radharani, you are immoral. Now note, she's just trying to make it more difficult for Krishna. You are immoral, like that. And then Srimati Radharani begins to sort of, cry, because internally she cannot hear such harsh words like that. And Lalita's consciousness is the sum total of all harshness towards Krishna. She can't hear those harsh words in relation to Krishna. So she begins to cry. She begins to cry. And then Lalita tells Srimati Radharani, you are weak. Don't be sentimental. Don't be emotional. You are weak. Like that. See? And then she says, I am simply saying this like a guru, Shiksha. I am simply saying this because this is good for you. Like that. And my final instruction to you, don't submit to him. Don't submit to him. So this is bringing out, Rupa Goswami is saying like this in Lalita Goswami, he's bringing out, like that. And then when she sees no change in Srimati Radharani, then she changes to change her, like that. And Lalita becomes angry, and Srimati Radharani sees now her eyes have become red, like that. See? And seeing that her eyes becomes red, in that sense, then even Radharani's eyes becomes red. Because you're associating with that consciousness of your Shiksha Guru, so you get the consciousness of your Guru. In that sense, like that. See? So therefore, you could say in one sense, Lalita Devi is a sort of abode of affection for Krishna indirectly to bring up Krishna's more affection for Srimati Radharani. She indirectly gives a lot of pleasure to Krishna by making it more difficult for Krishna to meet Srimati Radharani, like that. Now, Lalita Devi is also, you could say, a lobbyist, a transcendental political lobbyist on behalf of Srimati Radharani, like that. And whichever girl she sees, and especially if she's a girl for the first time, she has the art of convincing the girl to join the party of Vrishabhanu's daughter, Srimati Radharani, to join that party. She actually does that. Yeah. And then she convinces that girl that if you join Srimati Radharani's party, you'll find that all your desires will become fulfilled. All your desires will become completely fulfilled, like that. Now, usually new girls are hunted by Krishna. He's the transcendental debauchee. Transcendental debauchee. In other words, Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, Adi Purusha. He can do whatever he likes, with whomever he likes, whenever he likes. That makes him the supreme enjoyer. Nobody can be a more supreme enjoyer than Krishna. He is second to none, and is equal to none, like that. Yeah. So Lalita Devi is sort of, you could say, in one sense, service. Is that no new girl can supersede Srimati Radharani in relation to associating with Krishna. Like that. But Krishna does that to make Srimati Radharani more envious and jealous, so that on her own accord she'll come to Krishna. But it is Lalita Devi's duty not for her to be in that consciousness, to go on her own accord to Krishna. Like that. So therefore Lalita Devi's principal service is to ensure that any new girl must come to Radharani's first. And when she gets the consciousness of Radharani and serving Srimati Radharani, then if Radharani introduces that girl to Krishna, it is bona fide. Otherwise it is not bona fide for Krishna to get directly hunt down. Like that, see? Srila Prabhupada says in one place, just as you have women hunters, he uses this word, pretty heavy. He says in the material world you have women hunters, like that. But it comes from the transcendental world, because the original woman hunter is Krishna. Everything is perverted here, but the originality of the transcendental nature of being a woman hunter is Krishna. But he cannot go through. It has to be filtered through the consciousness and training and association of Radharani for somebody else to associate with Krishna. And this is Lalita Devi's principal service, to ensure that Radharani is only for Krishna, not others, but through her they may serve and associate with Krishna, like that. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srimati Radharani is considered the topmost spiritual jewel or gem in the association of Krishna. And gopis like Lalita and Vishaka are simply expansions of our own spiritual form, like that. Simply expansions of our own spiritual form. And Srila Prabhupada says that Radharani expands itself in different forms to give more confidentiality to our own form in whatever means and ways of a close and intimate association with Krishna, like that. Now, I'm about to try to explain. I can't really explain it, but we'll try. So these are selected verses from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, to show the quality of Lalita expanded from Srimati Radharani, which affects the consciousness of Krishna. So I'll repeat. The quality and consciousness of Lalita expanded from Srimati Radharani, which affects the consciousness of Krishna. Is that all right? It cannot be really be philosophical, because the gopis are never philosophical. They are simply loving Krishna. They don't know any philosophy like that. Actually, we have to be detached from philosophy to enter into Vrajadam. We have to become detached eventually. You cannot be like a Shastri Ji or a Vairagi or a Tapasvi, to actually enter into Vraja. We have to give up all these tendencies of Jnana and Vairagya and so forth like that. Yeah. Now, in the Madhya Leela, in chapter 21, there's this particular words, Bhusanera Bhushana Anga, Tahen Lalita Tri Banga. Like Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gupa Swarupam, Achintya Guna Swarupam, and Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. But there's also the word Tribanga Lalita. The word Lalita is the Tribanga Lalita. Now, when Krishna is standing in his Tribanga Lalita, threefold bending form, he is crooked or curved in three places, like that. See? So this three curved style of standing of Krishna is coming from the word called Lalita. Yeah. And Prabhupada specifically says that the word Lalita means delicate or sensitive, like that. Now, if it is delicate or sensitive, then that means the counterpart nature of Krishna, who is delicate and sensitive, is Srimati Radharani. Like that. In other words, that form that we see on the altar, especially on Radha Shyamasundar altar, the Tribanga Lalita form, is the form that best and is the most suited to attract Srimati Radharani. Is most suited to attract Srimati Radharani. And it comes from the consciousness of Lalita that enters into Krishna's consciousness to stand like that, to attract Srimati Radharani. Now, the delicate and sensitive feature of Krishna, who's the form of Srimati Radharani, it brings out a consciousness to be attracted to Krishna only when Krishna is delicate. And that delicate form is called Lalita, which is expanded from Srimati Radharani into the form of Lalita and then affects the consciousness of Krishna to attract Srimati Radharani. Tribanga Lalita, like that. Now, there is another word that Krishna gets affected by, and it's called Dhira Lalita, like that. Dhira Lalita means, according to Srila Ramananda Rai's talks with Lord Chaitanya, like that, in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, Dhira Lalita means that the person is affected by the personification of cunningness. So cunningness personified, you could say, overwhelms the consciousness of the person. And that cunningness brings out the youthfulness of the person more. Like in the material world, we know that if an older person is cunning, it is not lovable. But if a younger person is cunning, is it expected? It becomes lovable. Like that, see? So cunningness is a form of acute intelligence. I can outsmart you. In that sense, like that. So this word of being cunning in relationship to Krishna being cunning is called Dhira Lalita. And the cunningness of Krishna that comes out as Dhira Lalita is that he jokes externally. He doesn't mean it. That's called cunning. He jokes externally, like that. And therefore, when he does that, Lalita Devi makes it more difficult for him to come to Krishna because to come to Srimati Radharani because he is cunning. So therefore, he's decorated with that word, Dhira Lalita, which is expanded from Radharani's, you could say, influence by Lalita. Don't meet him, he's cunning. So in order to outsmart Krishna's cunningness, an expert in externally joking, like that, Lalita has to be more smart than Krishna, like that. So therefore, Dhira Lalita. Dhira Lalita means Krishna becomes sobered by Lalita's interaction and instruction to Srimati Radharani. He becomes sobered. Then he comes out of his cunningness and he submits. And therefore, as Srila Prabhupada said, he becomes a subservient. He becomes subservient to Srimati Radharani. He becomes like a servant of Srimati Radharani. Then in Chaitanya Charitamrita, this word is used in another way, Lalita, like that. It's quite amazing. Lalita is also in Sanskrit called, another word in Lalita in Sanskrit is called Alankara. Alankara means a beautiful jewel or ornament, in that sense, like that. So when there is a sense of ecstatic feelings of Srimati Radharani, like that, her eyes becomes very appropriate in a feminine gesture, like that. And that is because Lalita's association makes her eyes becomes more appropriate in a feminine gesture. And that is called, she's ornamented in a Lalita way, Alankara, in that sense. Yeah. And when Krishna happens to see Srimati Radharani decorated with this Lalita or Ahankara ornaments, where her eyes becomes more feminine in that sense, then he is eager to meet her. He is eager to meet her. And that eagerness is stopped again by Lalita saying, Radharani, don't go. Don't go, in that sense, like that. So that is called a Lalita Ahankara. That is simply Alankara. It's simply because of the association of Lalita to Srimati Radharani in relationship to making Krishna more eager to meet Srimati Radharani. That's the simplest way I could put that. Gleaning it out from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, like that. Now, as we are aware that Lalita is the most confidential associate of Srimati Radharani, like that, see? So, and she's on the right side of Krishna, like that, see? So in other words, Krishna is influenced by the left-wing nature of Radharani. He cannot be influenced with the right-wing nature of Chandravali, because Lalita is next to him. She will absorb his right-wing nature and push it back to the left-wing side. So therefore, he is always surrounded from left to right, in that sense, like that. So when this happens, Prabhupada and Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, they quote from various scriptures. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami quotes from Vidagdha Mahadeva of Srila Rupa Goswami's works, like that. When this happens, then Srimati Radharani is being instructed by Lalita Devi in a poetic form, like that. And Lalita Devi says, look, our hearts are polluted by the, you could say, miserable association of Krishna. She doesn't say Radharani's heart is polluted, because she is part of Radharani. Our hearts are polluted by the miserable association of Krishna, like that. But the interesting thing is that the more misery Krishna gives us, the more he influences by his crooked smile. Like that. And therefore, we expect that he'll be full of cheating tricks. He'll do something funny again, which we will not understand. You cannot predict what he will do, in a cheating propensity, like that. And then she says, but Srimati Radharani, you are more intelligent than him. You should figure this out, like that. See? And I cannot understand why you have developed so much a loving affection for this deceitful debauchee from our neighborhood, like that. See? So in that sense, in that way. And then she says, Lalita says to Radharani, quoted in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that you are more beautiful than Krishna because you are my most beautiful friend, like that. Now, if you please accept Krishna that is standing before you, then I see that your eyes become restless and it roams from side to side, in that sense, like that. And it looks like bumblebees looking for nectar. Now, standing in the Sribanga Lalita form, which is curved in 3 places, you can see his neck is tilted in a very crooked way to one side. And that's Krishna on the altar also, like that. And when he takes his flute and he brings it to his lips, you become envious. Because why the flute is touching his lips, like that. And then he moves his fingers here and there, like that. So Lalita, in the first instance, she speaks of Krishna in a harsh way. But in this instance, quoted from the Lalita Madhava, first Vedanta Madhava, in this instance, she's glorifying Krishna. So Krishna bewilders even Lalita. In other words, she speaks harsh words and then she glorifies him, like that. See? So that shows that Krishna is the most intelligent. In that sense, is the most intelligent. And then after this, Lalita is addressed by Srimati Radharani. And Srimati Radharani tells Lalita that, my beautiful faced Lalita, my heart is burning, like that. And it is full of anxiety that is unfathomable and even deeper than the ocean. I cannot figure this out, like that. But because of this, you're my only friend and I offer you my obeisances, like that. What shall I do? In this condition, you please instruct me or advise me how I can become peaceful. Because the disciple can become peaceful only in relationship to associating with the Guru, like that. I cannot be peaceful because my heart is burning, for his association, like that. So in this way, when Srimati Radharani is being, you could say, afflicted, Prabhupada says, with the separation from Krishna, she speaks to Lalita in this way, like that. And she cannot bear the suffering of separation from Krishna, you could say, anymore, in that way, like that. And she says, I prefer to be dead. I prefer not to live, in that sense. So only you can resolve this, like that. Then in Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the Anta Leela, Lalita writes a letter to Krishna. Meeting him personally and writing a letter is different things. Because she can be influenced by Krishna to say to Radharani, please come. She writes a letter like that. And in the letter she says, my dear Krishna, Srimati Radharani is unconscious and she's fallen on the ground, like that. Her consciousness is deeply agitated because she's feeling great separation from you. But I know that you are a first-class politician, like that. And therefore, you give grief to everyone, but why can't you give relief to everyone? Like that. So therefore, you please consider the consciousness and the plight of Srimati Radharani. Otherwise, you will soon hear of a death and you have been invited for a funeral. A very heavy letter she wrote. And then maybe at that time you will lament, although now you are feeling jubilant that you have thrown her in the pangs of separation. These verses, they cannot really be understood. I'm just repeating what's there. But it's too, it cannot be fathomed, in terms of philosophical or shastric understanding. It cannot be fathomed. We're just repeating what Prabhupada has given us, quoting from Lalita Madhava and Vidagdha Madhava, like that. And then she writes another letter, which is quoted in Chaitanya Charitamrita from Hansadutta, like that. And she says, you Krishna, you simply by dancing in the circle of the rasa dance, you attracted Radharani's love. That means she's not attracted by your love. You attracted her because you had to do something, you had to dance. You had to dance. So why are you now so indifferent to Srimati Radharani? She is lying unconscious, thinking of your pastimes with her. And I shall determine whether she's alive or not by putting a cotton bud, cotton wool in front of her nostrils. And if she is still living, I will chastise her. Why are you still living? In that sense. So now, for us to understand this, we have to understand through the Panchatattva. It is clear that for us in ISKCON, we cannot enter into Radha Krishna's pastimes without the mercy of the Panchatattva. And it is quite interesting, quoted in Chaitanya Charitamrita in the Adi Leela, that in the Gaur Ganadas Dipika, Srimati Radharani, who is known as Vrindavaneshwari, is actually personified in the form of Gadadhar Pandit, like that. But feeling separation from Krishna, not with Krishna, like that. So Srila Swarup Damodar Goswami has pointed out that in the shape of Lakshmi, or the pleasure potency of Krishna, she was formerly known as Shama Sundar Vallabha, that one who's dear to Shama Sundar, like that. So that same Shama Sundar Vallabha, present in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, is Gadadhar Pandit. Now, Prabhupada says something very interesting. Formerly, as Lalita Sakhi, she was devoted to Srimati Radharani. But because Srimati Radharani is feeling so much separation from Krishna, that separation is influenced into the consciousness of Lalita, and she cannot do anything about it. It's like the Shiksha Guru is influenced by the Shiksha disciple. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada says that this Gadadhar Pandit is a simultaneous incarnation of Srimati Radharani and Lalita Sakhi. And I always thought, I did this research many years ago, I always thought that Lalita Sakhi is actually Swarup Damodar Goswami. I always thought that, like that. Now, Lalita Sakhi is three personalities in Chaitanya Leela. She is Radharani's consciousness of separation as Gadadhar Pandit. She is also Swarup Damodar Goswami. And believe it or not, she is also Ramananda Rai. All given in Chaitanya Charitamrita. But it will take more time for me to sort of discuss how. I have done the research within the church. How is that happens? I just discussed how she is simultaneously Radharani's consciousness of separation as Gadadhar Pandit. Like that. Lalita Devi. Like that. How? Like that. Srila Prabhupada says in some places that because just as the constant attendance of Radharani as Lalita and Vishaka, so similarly the constant attendant of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Swarup Damodar and Ramananda Rai, like that, and Ramananda Rai, like that. So sometimes Ramananda Rai is also considered Arjuna in that sense, and sometimes is considered incarnation of Lalita, whereas others consider that he is an incarnation of Vishaka Devi, Ramananda Rai. So just to reconcile that a little bit, like that. When Swarup Damodar's consciousness is acute in separation from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is Lalita Devi. Like that. And when Ramananda Rai is alone with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is Lalita Devi. But when they are both together with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then Swarup Damodar is Lalita and Ramananda Rai is Vishaka. In that sense. This is the reconciliation of how they have overlapping identities of the same person in terms of consciousness, not in terms of the physicalness of the form. In that sense, like that. Now, just to conclude, Lalita Devi appeared in a place called Lalita Gram or Unchagam. Many of you, maybe all of you, have already been there. There'll be a major festival there today in Unchagam in relation to the appearance of Lalita Devi. Lalita is also known as that beautiful name, Anuradha. That's her name, Anuradha. One who follows Radharani, Anuradha. And her parents, our mother is Saradi and her father is Vishok. They used to be in that vicinity of Unchagam, like that. And she also is married to Bhairava, who's a close friend of another Gopa called Govardhan, in that sense, like that. But her principal service to Srimati Radharani is that she is Srimati Radharani's Shiksha Guru, in that sense, like that. So if you have a chance and if you got time, you can go to Unchagaon today and get a special mercy. And also we can get a special mercy right here on our own altar. Srimati Lalita Devi is here. I went 5 minutes over time, so I guess no questions, right? Panchagoda? Huh? He's giving blessings to take some questions if you have. What's your name? Tribhuvanath. Okay. Hare Krishna. Yeah, Rupa Goswami, that's the first verse in the Lalita Astaka. She worships the perspiration of the divine couple. So what's your question? And the perspiration flows into Chintamani gems. Next question. All right. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Lalita Devi Sakhi ki jai. Shri Radha Shama Sundar Lalita Vishaka Devi ki jai.